Chapter 03. The smile in the midnight. Hearing this, I suddenly remembered the ghost stories my grandmother used to tell me before going to bed when I was little. Sometimes I also wonder and ask Grandma, the same way James asked me, "Have you seen a ghost yet?" At that time, I was young, after hearing a ghost story about a white shadow sitting on a tree branch and combing its hair, or a ghost pulls a passenger cart to a deserted road, then suddenly drops its head to the ground and rolls around, but its eyes still look straight at the people sitting on the cart. If it looks at that person and cries, that person will die immediately, but if it laughs, it will follow that person home. My grandmother was a treasure trove of living ghost stories from the time when I was a child. Hearing my question, Grandma was silent for a while, then replied, "Ghosts are not visible to everyone. It is said that only people with weak nerves or fear can see ghosts. Or when the ghost lets us see, then we can see. The devil's nature is invisible. If it wants to exist, it must enter a person with a certain destiny, or a person who is missing a part of their soul." Hearing stories like that, one day I felt the urge to pee, but I didn't dare to go. When I couldn't bear it anymore, I was forced to run outside to pee quickly, and then frantically rush back into the house. Until later, I was told by many people that women and children are the two most likely to see ghosts, because women's souls are often weak and they believe in ghosts. Women's negative side is often stronger than men's, so women will often see ghosts more often. Children are a little different. Why demons often come to children to tease and harass is because children's souls are always pure, and a child's eyes are not yet clouded by evil thoughts or thoughts of the world around them. That's why children can easily see ghosts. That is the reason why mothers often wear a safety pin for their children on their chests. They avoid taking their children out on the street from 9 p.m. onwards. Those answers also make sense because of the strangeness going on in the villa, but only James's mother, wife, and son feel it. And strong men like James's father, a veteran warrior, or James, a personable and quite brave guy, don't feel anything. However, looking at James right now, I see that James himself has also experienced a feeling of insecurity that only people who have seen ghosts can understand. James continued to say that very evening, James's son, Long, could not sleep. After dinner, Mary carried her son into her room and told him a story to put him to sleep. After about 30 minutes, Long also took a nap. James blamed his wife. "Next time, if you go somewhere, wait for me to come home and take the car, and then you two can go wherever you want. If not, tell me so I can take you there." It's such a sunny noon like that, but you take the boy to the supermarket. Sometimes it even causes him to have a fever and cry. Mary saw that her husband's words were reasonable, so she gently apologized to him. After her son finished sleeping, Mary quietly went out to clean up the bowls and chopsticks that had just finished eating but hadn't washed yet. James sat and watched TV. Suddenly, the couple was startled by their son's cry. Mary put down the bowl and chopsticks, washed her hands, then quickly ran into the room. James also quickly ran in to see if his child was okay. The couple widened their eyes when they saw long, swollen red streaks on the boy's biceps. Mary quickly carried her child out to the living room. Long's eyes were still closed, but from time to time he cried. The red spots appeared more and more each time. Mary hugged her child and looked at her husband, worried. "Honey, is it because we were in the forest that our child was stung by something? Please try to find a way. It keeps crying." James was just as worried as his wife. Looking at the clock, it was only 7 o'clock. James told his wife to get a coat for his son, then drove him to the hospital to see how he was. Mary ran into the room to get her son a small jacket. Getting in the car, the couple took their child to find a doctor. Mary is also a woman, remembering what her mother often told her. When taking children out at night, We must bring anything sharp metal, especially going through mountains and forests with perennial trees. You must keep a safety pin in your pocket." Thinking so, Mary told her husband to wait a moment. She ran into the living room table drawer and took out the box of safety pins that were already there. Getting into the car, the little boy cried even louder. His eyes were still closed, but his face was contorted in pain. Mary took 2 safety pins and pinned them on the chest of her child's shirt, one inside shirt and one outside shirt. The car drove about 200 meters when the boy stopped crying. Going out to the main street, the lights were shining. Looking around, James saw a quite large private clinic. Hastily stopping the car, James carried his child inside. Long was not crying at this time, but his eyes were still closed as if sleeping. Meeting the doctor, James and his wife explained that their child had long red rashes and was crying in pain. The doctor lifted Long's sleeve and looked at the marks on the boy's hands. They were not pimples or allergies. Those marks have now turned black, looking like someone scratched them. The doctor looked at the couple and said, "Is this a red rash? Or did you two beat your child and then bring this boy here? Obviously, these are bruises." James and his wife looked at each other in bewilderment. Clearly at home just now, they still saw rashes on Long's body. Not daring to say anything more, James bought a bottle of anti-bruising cream and also bought some medicine to treat itching and allergies. The couple went to the car to go home. Sitting in the car, Mary thought and said to her husband, "Honey, is it possible that there is something strange in our house? I have a feeling that something is not right." James didn't originally believe in ghost stories. Even now, he still thought that maybe the child cried and hid his hand somewhere, causing it to turn out like that. But worried about his son, James replied, "I know, let me see. People say that when buying or building a house, you must make offerings to the land and make some kind of prayer. I don't believe it, but what if our child has an allergic reaction? Tomorrow I'll ask my friends if they know any monks who worship or call to do the ceremony." Mary nodded in agreement. Before buying the house and renovating it, Mary also expressed to James that she wanted to worship the spirits on that land, but her husband dismissed it. Now he probably loves his son, so he listens to his wife. Although James has always been a businessman, he does not like worshiping ceremonies. James always thinks, if you don't do anything wrong, if you don't harm anyone, there's no need to worship. When he arrived home, it was already 9 p.m. Looking at the dark house, James turned to ask his wife, "Did you turn off the power when you left?" Mary looked at her husband with some fear. "No, when I was in such a hurry, I didn't even have time to lock the door. So how could I remember to turn off the light?" James stopped the car in the yard and then stood looking over the entire villa. Suddenly, there was a noise coming from the second floor. The noise was quite strong. James raised his hand to signal his wife to be quiet. Approaching the door, James gently turned the handle. The door was indeed unlocked. Mary followed behind her husband, holding her breath and saying, "Could it be that there was a thief?" James gently entered the house and turned on the bright lights. The house is still the same. The furniture is still intact. Nothing is missing. Grabbing a wooden stick next to the shoe cabinet, James told Mary to stand below and then headed up the stairs to the second floor. Up to the second floor, the hallway window was still open. The sea breeze blew in with the sound of rustling leaves. Turning on the light, James shouted loudly, "Who is there?" All around was silent with no response. Both upstairs rooms were still open because James finished hanging the paintings at noon and hadn't had time to pack up the furniture. In the room next to the room where his parents slept yesterday, there was still the chair that James stood on to nail that afternoon. But the hammer that James had placed on the chair at noon had now fallen to the ground. The curtains in the room were blown away by the strong wind. Outside, thunder and lightning rumbled loudly. The wind got stronger and stronger. James reached out to pull the window shut. The wind blew so strongly that the room's door behind him slammed shut. A cold breeze blew on the back of James's neck, sending chills down James's spine. At this time, the sky suddenly poured heavy rain. James was about to go down, but he couldn't open the door. The wind was blowing so strong that the door was closed quite strongly. Maybe it's stuck now. James tried to turn the handle, but couldn't get the door to open. James called out, "Mary, please bring me the key up here. The door cannot be opened from the inside." He didn't know if Mary heard or not, but he didn't hear her reply. The sound of the rain and the wind outside grew stronger and stronger. Lightning flashed through the cracks in the door, creating dim, flashing white lights. James kicked the door violently, but it remained silent, stubbornly refusing to open. Don't know what his wife and children are like below. James raised his stick and was about to break the door. Phew. The whole room was dark because of a power outage. Clack, clack. The door finally opened. James rushed out and ran downstairs, then saw Mary holding her child and going to the second floor. Taking out his phone to illuminate, James said, "Power outage?" The door really annoyed me, closing it but not opening it. She looked at her husband and smiled without saying anything, and then went down. James suddenly felt goosebumps when the house lost power at such a dark time, and Mary could still laugh. Stepping down to the first floor, the power was restored. James pulled Mary's hand and asked, "What were you laughing at just now? Is the boy still sleeping?" Speaking of this, Long suddenly opened his eyes wide. The little boy jumped down from his mother's arms and ran to hug James's leg. Seeing that his wife did not answer, James pulled his wife's hand and turned around. At this moment, Mary said, "Oh, there's electricity again, huh?" James put the stick back in its place, then answered his wife, "You're also here, so why are you still asking? The power just went out. Maybe the wind was blowing just now, causing the chair to move so the hammer fell from above to the ground. But there was no thief. Maybe the house was dark when we got home. It was also due to a power outage. Look how the boy is doing. He just woke up." Mary called her son back, but he refused to come back. James sighed and picked up his son on the chair, lifted his son's sleeve. The bruises from earlier had disappeared as if they had never appeared. James laughed loudly. "Look, it's over. Maybe just now had a little allergic reaction, but it's gone now." James asked his son, "Do you have pain anywhere?" The boy shook his head. James continued, "Come with Mom to bed. I need to take a shower." Long looked at his mother and shook his head. Mary had to pick him up so that he could reluctantly follow his mother. Mary said, "Take a quick shower. It's late. It's raining so hard, I wonder if the trees outside will fall." James smiled. "That's just how you feel. If it rains and all the trees outside fall, who would dare to stay here?" After speaking, James went into the bathroom near the kitchen. Mary carried her child into the bedroom. While taking a shower, the sound of running water mixed with hot steam rising, James heard someone moving around in the kitchen. Thinking it was his wife, James spoke up. "Is Long sleeping? By the way, please hang a towel on the door for me." Outside responded, "Yes." The towel was draped over the door immediately. James said, "Thank you, my wife. Today you're worried about random things. Just being so frantic. It's true that you're becoming more and more like my mother. Everything you look at becomes strange." The noise from outside still came from right in front of the bathroom door. The sounds of rustling, the sound of running water, and the sound of the wind blowing strongly outside. Seeing no response from Mary, James dried himself, got dressed, and opened the door but saw no one. Only saw that the bowl and chopsticks had been washed without realizing when. Thinking that his wife worked hard to put the children to sleep and then went out to do the dishes, James chuckled in his heart. Opening the door slightly, James walked in and softly called out, "My dear wife washes the dishes so clean." But Mary didn't answer. He looked in. James saw that the two of them were embracing each other and sleeping. Chuckling and shaking his head, James said, "So fast. Just a moment ago she was washing the dishes. Now she's asleep. Anyway, she did too much work today." Having finished speaking, James gently climbed into bed next to his child and then wrapped his arms around the two of them to sleep. Feeling a bit cold, James pulled the blanket to cover all three of them. Feeling the movement, Mary immediately opened her eyes to look at James and smiled softly. "Have not you slept yet?" James signaled silence for fear of waking the boy. The whole family of three hugged each other and slept, but no one knew that one person was still lying there smiling alone even though the clock was now 12 o'clock at night.